The debate hall was thick with tension every breath, every pause carrying the weight of anticipation. Kellyanne Conway, former White House counselor and master of political spin, had just unleashed what she believed was an airtight attack on progressive policies. Her trademark smirk radiated confidence, as though she'd trapped her opponent in a corner with no escape. But across the stage sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas, calm, poised, and unreadable. Beneath that steady exterior, however, was a mind sharpened by years of courtroom battles, armed with evidence, precision, and preparation. What happened in the next half-minute wouldn't just dismantle Conway's talking points, would leave the audience on its feet. And Conway herself, visibly stunned. Conway entered that stage with the confidence of a political veteran. She was a survivor of presidential campaigns, endless media battles, and high-stakes debates. She had built her career on the art of spin, redirecting and reframing arguments until opponents were tangled in their own words. Senators, governors, reporters, she had outmaneuvered them all. Tonight, she thought she faced just another rookie Democrat who would wilt under pressure. But Jasmine Crockett was no ordinary opponent. At 42, the freshman congresswoman represented a new breed of political fighter, combining sharp legal training with fearless authenticity. A former civil rights attorney, Crockett was used to courtrooms where facts mattered more than rhetoric, and where evidence, not charm, won cases. Her style wasn't to dodge or spin, but to answer head-on with logic that couldn't be shaken. Born in Missouri and battle-tested in Texas, Crockett brought both grit and intellect to the stage. Colleagues had quickly learned that underestimating her was a mistake you only made once. What made her especially dangerous to an opponent like Conway was her ability to translate the language of law into plain, powerful speech, direct, undeniable, and devastating. For Crockett, this debate wasn't just politics, it was strategy. She had prepared like a trial lawyer before a landmark case, dissecting Conway's record, anticipating her lines of attack, and preparing rebuttals designed not just to defend, but to flip the script. This was more than a debate. It was a clash of eras: Conway's polished spin machine versus Crockett's fact-based precision. For weeks, insiders had speculated how the battle would play out. Some predicted Conway's experience would crush the freshman congresswoman. Others sensed that Crockett's sharp new style might surprise the seasoned strategist. What nobody expected was the scale of what came next. Jasmine Crockett didn't just counter Conway's arguments, she dismantled her entire framework for political combat. As Conway leaned forward, polished and practiced in her burgundy blazer, she struck at progressive spending policies, expecting her opponent to fumble. But Crockett, steady as a litigator before a jury, was ready. Within seconds, she turned Conway's confident assault into a self-inflicted wound, proof that in this new era of political discourse, facts and precision could outshine even the most seasoned spin. The hall erupted. Viewers across the country watched as a freshman congresswoman schooled one of the sharpest veterans in modern politics, proof that preparation, principle, and precision can shatter even the strongest armor of political spin. The spending proposals, Conway declared, weren't just reckless, they were destructive. We're talking about trillions in new debt that our children and grandchildren will never escape. She paused deliberately, sweeping the room with the confidence of a veteran performer who knew she had just sprung a trap. The camera caught her faint smile, the look of someone convinced her opponent couldn't wriggle free. Her fingers tapped the table lightly, signaling both control and anticipation. Conway's team had drilled her for this exact moment: mock sessions, rehearsed soundbites, and carefully tailored attacks meant to expose Crockett's supposed weaknesses. Years of combat on the national stage had given her the belief that no freshman congresswoman could possibly rattle her, her voice sharpened with indignation. The real danger isn't just the wasteful spending, it's the lack of accountability. These bills promise everything to everyone, but deliver nothing of substance. It's fantasy dressed up as policy. Turning toward Crockett, she shifted to a more personal strike. My colleague represents a district that needs real, targeted solutions. Instead, she backs massive bills that empower Washington bureaucrats, while leaving her own constituents behind. The audience stirred some nodding, others uneasy at the edge Conway's remarks carried. But she pressed on, unwilling to settle for a single strike when she could deliver a barrage. Flipping open a folder she had staged on the table, Conway launched into specifics. The so-called infrastructure bill costs more than the GDP of most countries. The climate provisions will kill jobs in energy without offering replacements, and the social programs. They breed dependency, not independence. Locking eyes with Crockett, her tone mixed condescension with feigned concern. I respect her passion. I do. But passion without experience is dangerous. It creates speeches that sound inspiring but fail in real life. We need leaders who deliver results, not rhetoric. The moderator tried to cut in, but Conway raised a hand with practiced authority. No, this matters. Voters deserve this conversation. She turned back, softening her tone in a way that was somehow more cutting than aggression. Jasmine, I've been in the rooms where these decisions are made. I've seen policies that look flawless on paper crash in the real world. Experience matters. Wisdom matters. And you don't learn that overnight. Seasoned observers recognized her strategy immediately. This wasn't just a policy attack. It was a credibility takedown. By contrasting her decades of experience with Crockett's status as a newcomer, Conway was writing a narrative designed to outlast the debate itself. She knew from years of battle sometimes questioning competence was more devastating than debating policy. Conway leaned back in her chair, eyes gleaming with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. Conway leaned back in her chair, the picture of self-assurance. Her expression radiating the smug confidence of someone convinced she had just delivered a masterclass in political combat. Supporters in the audience nodded, satisfied with the blows she'd landed on Crockett's policies, her experience, even her understanding of her own voters. What Conway didn't realize was that her carefully constructed attack had done more than wound her opponent. It had laid the perfect foundation for a devastating counterstrike. By framing the debate as experience versus principle, she had unknowingly built the very stage where Crockett's legal training could shine. Brightest stopped the cameras, scanned the audience, some impressed by Conway's sharp dismantling, others shifting uneasily at the personal edge of her attack. But nearly all eyes had already moved to Jasmine Crockett, waiting, almost holding their breath for her reply. Conway mistook the silence for victory. She smiled faintly, reading Crockett's pause as hesitation, as if the freshman congresswoman had no defense against decades of Washington battle scars. She had no idea Crockett wasn't stalling. She was selecting, choosing not whether to respond, but how hard to strike. Crockett straightened in her chair. The shift was small but unmistakable. The transformation of a listener into a litigator. Her eyes locked on Conway and the rooms. Energy changed instantly. People leaned forward. Phones tilted upward. Even the camera crew adjusted their angles, sensing the moment about to unfold. Conway had set a trap. She just didn't realize she was the one caught in it. Crockett began not with fire, but with unnerving calm. Kellyanne, I appreciate the lecture about experience and wisdom. I really do. Her tone was respectful, but laced with steel. But before we talk about my lack of experience, let's examine what your experience actually produced. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed Conway's face. Crockett leaned in, her voice steady, precise, surgical. You say you've been in the rooms where decisions are made. You're right, you have. And those rooms gave us for years of policies that ballooned the deficit more than any administration in history, while handing tax breaks to the wealthy and powerful who needed them least. The audience stirred, the shift in momentum palpable. Crockett pressed harder, her cadence now unmistakably that of a prosecutor building her case. You warn about burdening our children with debt. But where was that concern when your administration added more than $7 trillion to the national debt? Where was that fiscal responsibility when you defended tax cuts that left working families behind while padding the pockets of corporations? Conway shifted, trying to interrupt. But Crockett cut through with relentless control. You criticize infrastructure spending. Fine, let's talk infrastructure. Your administration promised an infrastructure week so many times it became a running joke. And what did Americans get? Not rebuilt bridges, not modern roads, just more corporate giveaways, while our communities literally crumbled beneath us. The audience erupted with murmurs, phones shaking as people tried to capture every word. Crockett didn't stop. Her voice sharpened like a blade. And jobs. You speak of protecting energy workers, but your policies killed growth in renewable energy while clinging to industries already in decline. You didn't secure the future, you sabotaged it. At that, Conway's earlier confidence faltered. She had walked into the debate believing she was teaching a rookie a lesson. Instead, she was facing a trained litigator dismantling her record, point by point using Conway's own argument as evidence against her. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric, filled with the weight of a room realizing the balance of power had just shifted. Conway had propped up industries already collapsing under market forces. And Crockett was ready to make that point sting. Her voice sharpened as she turned. Conway's earlier condescension about experience and wisdom on its head. Kellyanne, you said passion without experience leads to failed policies. Crockett began, steady and unflinching. But what does experience without principles create? What does political wisdom without moral courage produce? The questions cut through the silence like a blade. Conway's confident mask faltered. She wasn't facing just a rebuttal, she was facing a systematic exposure of her entire political philosophy. Crockett's background as a civil rights attorney shone through as she built her case with surgical precision. You said programs create dependency. Let's test that claim with evidence. The expanded child tax credit your administration opposed it lifted more children out of poverty in 1 year than any program in recent history. That's not dependency. That's results. The audience stirred, the energy shifting. What began as Conway's commanding lecture was being flipped into a devastating prosecution. Crockett pressed forward, her cadence now that of a prosecutor before a jury. You talk about accountability. Where was it when your administration separated families at the border? Where was it when public health became a political weapon during a pandemic? Where was it when disinformation became an official strategy? Scattered. Applause broke out, unplanned, raw, unstoppable. Conway's discomfort was written across her face. She had expected to spar over policy details, not to be cornered by her own record. Then Crockett lowered her voice, forcing the audience to lean in. Kellyanne, you asked me how I justify these policies to my constituents. Let me ask you, how do you justify defending policies you knew were failing? How do you justify spinning failure into success while real people bore the cost? Her final blow landed with the force of both reason and morality. You say I lack experience, you're right. I lack experience defending the indefensible. I lack experience placing loyalty above truth. I lack experience telling struggling Americans their suffering is success they just can't see. If that's what experience looks like, then I'm proud to be inexperienced. The room erupted applause, crashing like a wave, building into a standing ovation. This was no longer a debate. 'Twas a dismantling of the very premise that experience alone equals leadership. Conway sat in stunned silence, her prepared talking points in shreds. Crockett.com, but resolute, had turned the entire exchange into a defining moment, one that reporters were already racing to capture as history in the making. Crockett sat still as the applause thundered, her composure steady, her expression controlled. She wasn't basking in victory, she was embodying it. That calm professionalism made her rebuttal land all the harder. She had not only defended her, Polisashi had exposed the hollowness of her opponent's entire political philosophy. Conway, meanwhile, sat frozen, her mind still processing the unraveling of a debate she thought she had in the bag. The seasoned political operator who had expected to swat aside a freshman congresswoman had been dismantled methodically, publicly, and unmistakably. Even before the debate ended, the moment was already breaking the internet. An audience member's phone clip captured the exact second Conway's confidence gave way to stunned realization. That image spread across platforms faster than any meme in recent memory. Within an hour, the clip had over 500,000 views. Reaction videos poured in from younger audiences who had never seen a politician deconstruct arguments with such surgical precision. Hashtags like hashtag Crockett destroys Conway and hashtag principles over experience were trending nationwide. The line, "I'm proud to be inexperienced," was everywhere. Quoted, remixed, and amplified into a rallying cry. Memes exploded across feeds. Conway's shocked face captioned, "When your opponent came prepared." Crockett's calm expression, paired with, "When courtroom training beats political spin." Commentators jumped in instantly. Jasmine Crockett just gave a masterclass in turning an attack into a cell phone, tweeted one analyst. A veteran reporter put it more bluntly. Conway came for a debate. Crockett came for a trial. And in trials, evidence beats spin every time. The story wasn't confined to American audiences. Clips were shared by international commentators who called Crockett's style a new model of political rhetoric off debate. Half prosecution. Newsrooms pivoted in real time. What was supposed to be routine coverage of a political exchange became a major story, looped across prime-time broadcasts. Anchors weren't just dissecting what Crockett said, they were analyzing how she said it. Conway's camp scrambled into damage control. Her social media pushed out earlier clips where she looked more in control. She rushed to TV interviews, trying to spin the exchange as spirited but inconclusive. Yet her delivery seemed uncharacteristically shaky. Even allies admitted privately. She prepared for the wrong fight. She thought she was debating a politician. She was up against a lawyer. And in a courtroom, rules change. Evidence trumps experience. For progressive organizations, Crockett's moment became an instant blueprint for countering polished conservative communicators. Grassroots groups circulated the clip in their chats before the debate had even wrapped. What had begun as a political clash was fast becoming a movement moment. Proof that sharp preparation and moral clarity could outmatch years of establishment polish. Progressive organizers wasted no time turning Crockett's performance into recruitment material. This is what effective political communication looks like. Read one widely shared message. This is how we fight back against decades of political spin. Within hours, fundraising emails featuring Crockett's words landed in inboxes nationwide, framing her as the model of principled leadership the movement needed. Small dollar donations surged, with her campaign reporting more money raised in 24 hours than in the previous 3 months combined. Supporters described being electrified by her debate performance. Across the country, young Democratic politicians studied the viral clip, eager to learn how Crockett had flipped Conway's experience attack back onto her. Political training programs began integrating the exchange into their workshops. teaching candidates how courtroom strategy could overpower traditional political spin. Prominent progressive leaders praised her online. One veteran activist wrote, "This is what happens when we send lawyers to do politics' job." Crockett didn't just win an argument, she redefined the battlefield, but the impact reached beyond the left. Observers across the political spectrum admitted something significant had shifted. The old advantages, experience, reputation, and name recognitions suddenly looked vulnerable against superior preparation and legal precision. Republican strategists quickly cautioned candidates not to underestimate younger Democratic opponents with courtroom backgrounds. The Crockett-Conway showdown became required viewing in campaign war rooms. For Jasmine Crockett, the transformation was immediate. Invitations poured in from across the country. Media requests flooded her office, pushing her once local profile onto national and international stages. Her social media following exploded overnight, and political betting markets began mentioning her in conversations about future national contests. Major Democratic donors, once focused on established figures, turned their attention toward her. High-profile fundraising events followed, expanding her support base far beyond Texas. Campaign consultants and strategists began dissecting her methods, eager to replicate her model of legal sharpness fused with political instinct. For Kellyanne Conway, the debate marked an uncharacteristic setback. While her allies insisted one clash could not erase her long career, there was no denying she had been blindsided. Conservative outlets that once treated her as untouchable began questioning whether she had lost her edge. Even some supporters admitted she had prepared for the wrong opponent, expecting a politician who played by the old rules, but facing instead a lawyer who played by courtroom rules, where evidence always outweighs spin. The exchange quickly came to symbolize a larger shift in American politics. The era where connections and name recognition guaranteed dominance was fading. A new generation, armed with legal training and strategic discipline, was rewriting the rules of political combat. Universities took notice. Law schools reported rising interest from students inspired by Crockett's performance, while communication programs began teaching her debate as a modern case study in persuasive strategy. Crockett's precise arguments and systematic dismantling of Conway's talking points quickly became a case study in modern political communication. Beyond the immediate clash, the debate symbolized a generational and cultural shift in American politics. Conway relied on traditional spin and strategic messaging, while Crockett delivered direct, evidence-based rebuttals rooted in her legal training. Young audiences especially embraced Crockett's style, praising her for bringing courtroom precision into the political arena. Clips spread rapidly across social media with captions celebrating her refreshing, fact-first approach. Universities began adding the debate to political science and communication courses, with scholars noting that Crockett's strategy reflected a broader change in how voters judge credibility, favoring logic and evidence over reputation alone. Polling suggested younger voters responded far more positively to Crockett's performance, while academic conferences around the world dissected her ability to flip Conway's experience argument into a liability. Analysts concluded that Crockett succeeded because her method aligned with shifting public attitudes. People no longer trust credentials without proof. They want arguments that withstand scrutiny. For Conway, the debate raised questions about whether her traditional playbook still worked against opponents unwilling to play by old rules. For Crockett, it was a defining moment, transforming her from a promising newcomer into a national figure. She showed that with preparation, precision, and principle, even a freshman congresswoman could outmaneuver a political veteran. The larger takeaway: in today's political landscape, preparation and clear arguments matter more than seniority or name recognition. Crockett turned the debate into a masterclass that will be studied for years. proving that fact-based communication can reshape political discourse. If you enjoyed watching Jasmine Crockett dismantle Conway's strategy, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a breakdown of these game-changing political moments. And let us know in the comments, who do you want to see Crockett debate next?